My mother didn't call. She didn't soften it. She didn't even pretend it was difficult for her. She just sent a text. Please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding. I was standing in the parking lot outside my office in Phoenix, Arizona, 2025, still holding my laptop bag. The desert heat shimmered off the asphalt as the words settled into me like dust after a quiet collapse. A moment later, I saw the notification. Jenna reacted to Mom's message. My younger sister, the bride, smiling at my exclusion like it was just another detail checked off her wedding to-do list. I felt a small, sharp snap inside me, not the kind that breaks you, the kind that frees you. I typed back, understood. And just like that, I stepped out of the role I played for 28 years. Before I tell you what happened next, drop where you're watching from. Because after the week that followed, I truly hope I'm not the only one who's lived a story like this. My name is Camila Rhodes, and if you grew up anything like me, you already know what I'm about to say. I was never the favorite. Certainly not in my mother's eyes. Probably not in my father's either. My mother, Elena, is the type who calls disappointment, constructive feedback, and favoritism family balance. My father, Robert, stays silent in the way men do when they don't want responsibility. And Jenna, well, Jenna has always walked through life like the world was a stage where she already had top billing. When she entered a room, people brightened. When I entered, people handed me tasks. So when they asked me to handle her wedding logistics, book the venue, track the invoices, coordinate the vendors, I did it. I always did. It was easier than arguing, and I was good at it. I'm a senior operations analyst. Spreadsheets and frameworks are my native language. But in the last few months, something shifted. Requests became expectations. Expectations became obligations. Obligations became debts I never agreed to owe. Still, I kept going. For the family. For peace. For the illusion that cooperation meant belonging. Then came the text. Please don't come. And the heart emoji that followed. That was the moment everything inside me finally aligned. The wedding was 3 days away. The venue, the contracts, the design mock-ups, the transportation arrangements, every piece of that event existed because of me. And every piece still required my final approval. They didn't know that. But they would. Because when my mother disinvited me, she wasn't just cutting out a daughter, she was cutting out the person holding the entire operation together. My sister smiled, thinking she'd won. And she had, until she realized what I quietly controlled. Elena would praise Jenna's choices like they were strokes of genius, then glance at mine as though they were logistical inconveniences. Robert kept repeating how grateful Jenna was, even though she hadn't thanked me a single time. And during one planning meeting, when I suggested adjusting the guest count to match the rapidly shrinking budget, Jenna didn't even pause her scrolling. She just sighed dramatically and said, "Camila, can't you just make it work? You always do." It's done. That sentence stayed in my chest like a bruise. Still, I pushed through. Whenever things felt too heavy, I visited my grandfather, Eduardo. His greenhouse behind the house was a refuge, warm, humid, filled with the sweet, earthy scent of orchids. He always seemed to know when something weighed on me, but I never wanted to add my burdens to his. He'd already lived through decades of quiet disappointments from this family. On the morning the text arrived, the one uninviting me, I was sitting at my kitchen table in my Phoenix apartment, reviewing the final vendor payments. The early sunlight caught on the tiny silver pendant hanging against my collarbone, the one Eduardo said symbolized clarity. Funny how clarity always comes right before something breaks. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of their celebration at all. I was just funding it. And for the first time, that truth didn't hurt. It grounded me. In the days after that message, everything in the family group chat looked too polished, too cheerful. Like a staged commercial for a family I didn't belong to. That was the first sign. The second sign came disguised as enthusiasm. Elena announced she wanted to expand the wedding into a full wedding week: brunches, spa days, winery tours, anything to impress Jenna's future in-laws. She said it casually, like she was choosing between salad dressings, but her eyes drifted toward Eduardo's envelope on my countertop. His savings. The emergency fund, he kept tucked away like sacred ground. I felt my muscles stiffen. "Mom, I said carefully. That money isn't for the wedding. She blinked, feigning confusion. Camila, don't be dramatic. Your sister is only getting married once. I looked at Jenna, hoping for some acknowledgement of the line our mother was crossing. But she only shrugged, adjusting the sleeve of the designer dress I paid for. It's not a big deal, she said. Grandpa doesn't even use that money. My stomach tightened. They had discussed this either lightly or deliberately without me. Later that week, I took Eduardo to get his suit fitted. He moved slowly but proudly, his hand tucked into my arm for balance. While he examined the jacket in the mirror, he spoke softly, eyes fixed on his reflection. I heard your mother talking, he whispered. They're making plans without you. His voice trembled the way truth often does, gentle but cutting. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to admit the truth I already knew. The fitting assistant called us over before I could respond to Eduardo's warning. 2 days later, everything finally aligned. I stopped by Elena's living room to drop off the finalized timeline for the rehearsal dinner. I had color-coded every segment, checked every vendor confirmation twice. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, when I stepped inside, I found Jenna lounging on the couch, her legs tucked under her phone raised as her thumb hovered above our family group chat. "Oh," she said when she noticed me. "Didn't know you were stopping by." Her tone wasn't hostile. It was worse. Dismissive. Elena didn't greet me. She didn't even make space for me to sit. "We're confirming the guest seating," she said instead. "Jenna found a layout better than the one you sent. Not kinder, not more practical. Just better, because it came from Jenna." Then Jenna's screen lit up. I didn't have to see the full text. I recognized the preview instantly. The message Elena had sent uninviting me. Right there, in front of me. Jenna's thumb tapped the little heart next to it. A soft motion, innocent to anyone else. But to me, it landed like a quiet fracture. A hairline crack spreading through something I had spent years holding together. She didn't look at me. She didn't apologize. She didn't even hesitate. She just locked her phone and said, "It's for the best, Camila. Everyone agrees. Everyone." The word hit harder than the message. I stood there staring at the two of them, both so comfortable in their roles, Elena as the critic, Jenna as the chosen one. The air felt thick, like the room itself was rejecting me, and then Eduardo's voice whispered in my mind. "They're preparing things without you." This wasn't confusion. This wasn't emotional clumsiness. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was deliberate. Designed, executed with the kind of casual cruelty someone uses to swat away an inconvenience. And in that moment, I understood something I had never admitted before. I wasn't facing a mistake. I was facing a plan. That night, after Jenna liked the message that erased me, I sat alone in my Phoenix apartment with my laptop open to the wedding expenses. Rows of payments glowed back at me: venue deposits, lighting adjustments, musicians, floral installations, transportation schedules, all approved by me, all paid by me. It didn't look like a celebration. It looked like a ledger, documenting the slow disappearance of my place in this family. For years, I convinced myself they didn't mean to take advantage of me. That helping was kindness, that supporting them made things easier. But staring at those numbers, I finally saw the truth. They weren't leaning on me. They were using me, consuming me. My phone buzzed a new message in the family chat. "Jenna, again. Updated seating chart. Mom wants my layout instead." No, please. No, thank you. No acknowledgement of the hours I had spent building a plan that actually worked. Cruelty becomes routine faster than anyone realizes. I closed the laptop gently, before I could second-guess the decision forming inside me. Because something was about to shift. And this time, it would be me doing the shifting. If you've ever felt that quiet snap inside your own family, hit subscribe, because what happens next in my story will feel hauntingly familiar. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. It felt as if something inside me had gone utterly still, sharp, clear, unmoving. I opened a private message to Elena, my mother, and typed 2 words. "Great choice." For a moment, I saw my reflection in the dark window beside me, calm, composed, a woman stepping out of a role she never agreed to play. Then I added the sentence they never imagined I would write. "Then you'll be free of my payments too." No anger. No explanation. Just truth. I hit send. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. Cleansing. Like a room finally aired out after years of being shut. I turned back to my laptop this time with intention, not obligation. One by one, like pulling threads from a tapestry, I examined every contract linked to Jenna's wedding. Catering, lighting team, venue, coordination, decor, rentals, every agreement tied directly to my personal account. Every authorization under my name. The power they believed was theirs had always been mine. I didn't need to fight them. I just needed to stop enabling them. So I emailed each vendor individually, referencing dates, clauses, cancellation terms. We will not be moving forward. Please cancel the pending invoice. Do not process additional charges. I didn't mention family conflict. No dramatic explanations. No frantic justifications. This wasn't revenge. It was boundaries clean, professional, overdue. As I worked, a strange peace settled through my apartment. Not triumph, not pettiness, just alignment. The feeling of finally acting in accordance with a truth I had ignored for too long. Around midnight, a soft knock echoed through my hallway. When I opened the door, Eduardo stood there small, steady, wrapped in a thin cardigan. The hall light cast a gentle glow on the lines in his face. He stepped inside and lowered himself onto my couch, smoothing his pants the way he always did when he was gathering strength. I know they hurt you, he whispered, but you don't have to carry them anymore. His voice trembled and that, more than anything, cracked something open inside me. Because he had lived it too. The being overlooked. The being taken for granted. The being used because he was the one who wouldn't complain. He knew exactly what it meant to love people who didn't protect you. I reached for his hand. I'm done carrying them, Grandpa, I said softly. I'm choosing us this time. A.R.A. He nodded, eyes shining not with sorrow but with pride. Before he left, he leaned close and whispered, when they come home, we'll be ready. And for the first time in my life, I believed him. The morning Jenna and Elena were scheduled to return from their pre-wedding getaway felt unnaturally quiet, like Phoenix itself was holding its breath, waiting for the first crack of thunder. Because the storm wasn't coming for me. It was coming for them. Eduardo sat at the kitchen table that morning, folding and unfolding the same linen napkin, his eyes drifting toward the window every few seconds as though he were listening for something only he could hear. I brewed tea just to keep my hands busy, the steam brushing my face as the weight of the day pressed deeper into my chest. This was the day everything shifted. I checked my phone one last time, no calls, no messages, not even a flight update. Of course not. To my family, I only existed when I could offer a solution. But today, they weren't getting a solution. They were getting consequences. Are you sure you're ready? Eduardo asked quietly. I nodded. More than ready. We left for Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport earlier than necessary. Eduardo held my arm as we walked through the terminal, steady beside me the way he had been my entire life. He didn't speak much, but he didn't need to. His presence alone was the grounding force I never knew I deserved. Each step felt like reclaiming ground I didn't realize I'd surrendered inch by inch over the years. Our attorney, Mason Clark, met us near the arrivals hall. He was calm, composed, the type of person who could make chaos look like a solvable puzzle. He greeted us, flipped open a black folder, and said, "Everything's in order. We'll wait until they exit baggage claim. They'll likely approach you first. Be ready for that." 8. Ready for their version of the story, I murmured. He gave a faint, knowing smile. People who depend on you rarely prepare for a world where you've stopped giving. Eduardo squeezed my hand, a small gesture, but it bolstered something fierce inside me. A ripple of movement pulled our attention to the sliding doors. Passengers spilled out, rumpled, tired, dragging suitcases behind them. Then I saw them. Elena, walking ahead with her chin raised, her posture sharp and self-assured, returning as if from a victory parade. Jenna, dragging an overstuffed suitcase, adjusting her hair every few steps. Ryan, her fiancé, lagging behind with his face buried in his phone, oblivious as usual. For a fleeting moment, old instincts tugged at me. The urge to greet them, smooth tensions, shrink myself so the peace would hold. but that version of me was gone. Elena spotted us first. Confusion flickered across her face before irritation quickly took its place. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, pulling her jacket tighter. "You didn't need to pick us up. We already have a ride." "We're not here to pick you up," I said, voice steady. Jenna rolled her eyes so dramatically it was practically theatrical. "Then what? You're here to apologize for ruining our wedding plans?" Eduardo inhaled sharply beside me. Mason stepped forward before I could respond. "Good morning," he said, his tone cordial but edged with professional authority. And just like that, the ground beneath my family began to shift. Not under me this time, but under them. "My name is Mason Clark," he said, his voice steady and unmistakably authoritative. "I represent Camila Rhodes and her grandfather in a matter requiring your immediate attention." Color drained from Elena's face. Jenna blinked rapidly, her chest rising in shallow, uneven breaths. "This must be a joke," Elena said, forcing out a brittle laugh. "A lawyer? For what?" "For the financial exploitation concerning wedding-related funds," Mason replied evenly, handing her a sealed envelope. "And the attempted use of Mr. Eduardo's emergency savings without consent." Elena snatched the document but didn't open it. "We didn't exploit anyone," she snapped. "Everything was agreed upon. Camila offered to help. She always does." "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You expected it not because I wanted to help, but because you refused to see me as anything other than a source of solutions." Jenna stepped toward me, jabbing a manicured finger in my direction. "You abandoned your responsibilities. You ruined everything. All you had to do was stay out of the way." "Stay out of the way," Eduardo echoed, his voice trembling yet unshakably firm. "You told her not to come. You told my granddaughter she wasn't welcome at a wedding she paid for." "Thanks for watching," an all-darn-stevity way. Jenna's glare faltered, weakening like a flame, losing oxygen. Elena turned sharply toward Eduardo. "Dad, stop being dramatic. This is a family matter." "No," Eduardo said, lifting his chin with the quiet strength of someone who has finally had enough. "Family doesn't discard one person to elevate another." By now, a small crowd had gathered, travelers slowing down, whispering, watching tension thicken the air like fog. Elena hated scenes. Her cheeks reddened as she glanced around, mortified, as though the embarrassment itself were something I had orchestrated. "We didn't do anything wrong," she insisted, voice rising. "You're twisting this." Mason opened another folder. "These," he said, producing stapled sheets, "are copies of the messages sent to Camila, including the one explicitly uninviting her from the event." He held up another document. "And this is detailed documentation of the payments she made toward the wedding." End quote. I watched Elena's eyes skim page after page, her jaw tightening as her carefully constructed narrative unraveled in her hands. Then Mason handed Jenna a separate envelope. "What's this supposed to be?" she snapped, brows arched. "A notice regarding the attempted redirection of your grandfather's emergency fund," Mason said, tone cool and controlled. "An account Camila monitors, as she is the only family member who has never withdrawn from it." A.N. Jenna clutched the envelope as though it might ignite. Elena spun back toward me, voice thin and sharp. "How dare you bring strangers into our private affairs?" "You made it private when you pushed me out," I said. "And you made it legal when you tried to use Grandpa's savings after you ran out of mine." Ryan, who had been uncharacteristically silent until now, finally stepped forward. "Look," he said, palms out as if pleading with the air itself, "can we all calm down? This is getting blown out of proportion." But even he knew there was no going back. The truth was already out in the open, and for the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking beneath it. "Blown out of proportion," Eduardo repeated quietly, his voice cutting through the noise more sharply than if he'd shouted. "You encouraged Jenna to ask for more money, more support, things she never earned." It started. Ryan's jaw tightened. "That's not just stop," Jenna snapped at him. "Just stop talking." Something inside her seemed to deflate. Her shoulders sagged, her polished confidence leaking away in slow, painful beats. In that harsh airport lighting, she looked less like the glowing bride she'd curated on Instagram and more like a scared kid caught doing something selfish and obvious. Elena's hand shook as she thrust the documents back toward Mason, then pulled them halfway back as if she couldn't quite let go. "We can fix this," she insisted, her voice thinner than before. "Just tell us what you want, Camila." I took a steady breath. For once, I didn't feel like I was about to shatter. I felt rooted. "I want you to understand that I'm done," I said. "Done being your safety net. Done paying for consequences you never learn from. Done pretending we're a family when you treat me like a problem to manage instead of a daughter." Silence spread between us, heavy and suffocating, swallowing the chatter of the terminal around us. "So you're punishing us," Jenna whispered, mascara smudging at the corners of her eyes. I shook my head. "No, I'm protecting myself." Mason stepped in again, his tone professional, calm. "There are steps you'll need to follow," he said. "You'll have to respond to these notices within the stated timeframe, and until this matter is resolved, you are not permitted to access Mr. Eduardo's accounts in any capacity." Elena finally opened the envelope fully. Her eyes skimmed the first lines, and I watched her expression crumble, fear pushing out indignation. "This could get us in trouble," she whispered. "It already did," Eduardo replied, his voice low but unwavering. Elena looked between us, her once steady confidence dissolving, replaced by something brittle and raw. "Camila, please," she said. "We're family." I met her gaze with a clarity I'd earned the hard way. "Family is supposed to protect each other," I said. "Not just themselves." For the first time in my life, she didn't have a response ready. No justifications, no guilt trips, just silence. Robert, who had been standing slightly behind her, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us like he was watching a storm he'd hoped would pass him by. "I'm sorry, Camila," he said quietly at last. "We should have done better." It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from him. I nodded once, acknowledging the words, but not letting them absolve anything. Jenna wiped at her cheeks, streaking black across her skin. Ryan stared at the floor, a man who suddenly realized the party might be over and the bill was due. Mason closed his folder with deliberate care. "We're done here," he said. Eduardo took my arm again, his grip warm and steady. As we turned to leave, Elena called after me, her voice cracking. "Camila, what are we supposed to do now?" I paused long enough to look back at her, not as the daughter begging to be chosen, but as someone who finally understood her own worth. "Figure it out," I said. "The same way you always expected me to." And then I walked away, not in anger. In freedom. Real freedom, the kind that doesn't ask permission. In the weeks that followed, everything settled the way truth always does, quietly, but permanently. The notices Mason filed moved forward. There were emails, follow-ups, forms to sign. For the first time, there were real, enforceable boundaries around Eduardo's savings. No more borrowing, no more emotional pressure disguised as tradition or duty. The account was protected, and so was he. I visited him more often after that. On Sunday afternoons, we sat in his small backyard, surrounded by potted orchids and herbs he'd been tending for years. The Phoenix sun was softer in the late afternoon, and the air smelled faintly of basil and wet soil when he watered the plants. He didn't look tired anymore. He looked lighter, like a man who'd been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. The wedding plans dissolved almost overnight. One by one, vendors sent confirmations of canceled contracts. Some messages were curt and transactional. Others came with awkward apologies for the inconvenience. A few family members sent me texts too, some angry, some confused, some uncomfortably polite. I didn't respond to any of them. Not out of spite. Because there was nothing left to discuss. One afternoon, as we sat in the shade, Eduardo rested his hand over mine. "You saved both of us," he whispered. But I didn't feel like a hero. I didn't feel righteous or triumphant. I felt like someone finally stepping into her own life, instead of standing off to the side funding everyone else's. A few days later, I found a listing for a volunteer position at a local advocacy center that supported older adults, people like Eduardo, who needed help with finances, boundaries, and the kind of protection they should have had long before anyone noticed they were being taken advantage of. I applied. At the interview, When they asked me why I wanted to help, I didn't tell them the whole story. I just said, I know what it looks like when someone's being used because their love is convenient. I want to help before it gets that far. For once, I wasn't putting out fires. I didn't start. I was choosing purpose. Looking back, I used to think love meant carrying everything, forgiving everything for the people who claimed they needed me. I thought that being the strong one meant never saying no. But real love, the kind that heals instead of drains, never asks you to disappear so someone else can shine. My family's choices didn't define me. My boundaries did. Walking away from them didn't mean I'd failed at being a daughter or a sister. It meant I'd finally succeeded at being myself. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been the one expected to carry everyone else, share your experience in the comments, tell me where you're listening from, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story.